they look for creative ways to get more money out of the targets when dot 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 dot. Okay, I honor you for watching. If you are logging in, whether live or at a later date here at YouTube Live at Blooming Tribe. Okay, if you are an honorable being, I honor you for watching. Okay, who is they? I'm really talking about targeted individuals and them and their children that have been trafficked in some type of a weird situation pertaining to living space, housing, things of that nature, where that was the means in the portal in which they accessed to create that, okay, to these various groups, communities, cults, you name it. So here is something to look for as some signs. Okay, now once you can gauge the patterns, there's going to be some patterns, and that's going to be some common denominators to let you know essentially that these individuals are upset because what they were initially planning to receive, because you're moving on to, let's say, another situation, then that particular deal or whatever is no longer, or whatever has been the benefit ends at that point due to you moving from that location. If something was supposed to occur at one location and it did not occur. And so what then happens is they are upset. And so they, of course, is going to double down towards the end. This is a pattern that you're going to see. Okay? They're going to double down towards the end on spell work, on harassment, on coming up with every reason to be disruptive, every reason to have something to do all of a sudden. Suddenly there's going to be all sorts of things that has to be done, and they're going to be even more obnoxious than they were before. But in terms of the fees, so let's say, they'll suddenly like change up, let's say, some login stuff or whatever, and, you may be trying to get assisted with that and they don't respond readily, just so that it can make it that you have to pay some kind of a late fee, okay, as a default of them not responding. Because let's say you reach out before any late fees to occur, okay? So, but they intentionally don't respond, and or they don't take into that consideration. Let's say if it was a Friday or something like that, they don't take that into consideration, like, oh, I wasn't in the office, so I'm not going to penalize you because I wasn't here. It looks like you attempted to reach out on blase date to remedy the issue, and so we're gonna just wait. No, they don't do that, because they are looking for all sorts of ways to rack up as much money as they can, since they know that it's coming to some kind of a close, okay? They're gonna look to irritate you in every way that they can. They're gonna look anything they can do, because essentially they're upset that whatever, if you were supposed to die, if you were supposed to go to jail, if you were supposed to get sick and be incapacitated, whatever was supposed to actually happen within that time span, they're upset because they're not going to get that full shebang bang. Pay attention to the pattern. I've been able to do that. My son's his first landlord in Texas, you all have already heard some of the story, but it was too costly for him to be in that unit anyway. I mean, it was run down, and so that made everything run high, on top of him being responsible for water, trash, and landscaping, along with the electric, okay, and all of those good old things. And all that stuff was running high, and just his income. Okay. Oh, okay. So then, I think at some point I attempted to get find, some kind of landscaper for cheap, or something, because I mean it would get ridiculous. And there was one person, or I think a couple of people, but anyway, there was one person that came to do it. And, again, I was, struggling. It was just his income. I mean, and like I said, and everything was running high, no transportation. Like, we don't need a violin, but just picture all of that. Okay. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try to do something to keep it, where it's not like a swamp, like, since he's responsible um, for that. So there was a guy, I didn't have the money. And so he was like, okay, you can pay it later or the next time. Because I was going to try. My desire and my goal was to be able, because he was fairly inexpensive out of a lot of the other ones. And so I was like, okay, I was like, we might be able to squeeze this. There's so many other things like that we have to do. So I wasn't able to, and I let him know that, and I told him I would contact him. I hadn't had it, blah blah blah. Now, where am I going with this? Because this has nothing to do with the landlord. It actually doesn't. This is something separate. It was not, like I said, he wasn't covering it. It was not one of his guys, to my knowledge. I mean, this was something I had to seek out on my own to find. Okay. So towards the end, after he had gotten all of the fees, like I told you, there was a program that he had told me about to get all of his fees, all of his stuff paid, which was not supposed to be done. Okay, that's something I'm clear now on, and understand that none of that was technically supposed to be done. Okay, but neither here nor there. He got, all the fees. So, because at first I was making monthly payments on top of my son's, on top of his rent, and then the monthly payments for like the security, the late fees, the time spent in which, as I've mentioned before, and this is traceable, all this communication happened prior to relocating from Nevada to Texas. We didn't arrive to Texas, and that was something that was already understood. We didn't arrive until, I want to say, February or March 2022. Okay? But he wanted to push everything forward. Okay? And like, oh, don't worry about it. So this is the lessons that I'm telling you all that we learned in retrospect, because it's you that ends up in some kind of a weird compromising position, and then these people, you think they're what they seem to be, and they're not. Okay, so, but again, like I said, it all seemed helpful and useful, and like, oh, savior, and all of that stuff. And so I now know why he was pushing all the stuff, because it's like he wanted to start collecting that money, and he wanted to get the credits for getting all the stuff in and done, even though I already communicated, like, I'm trying to rack up the money we don't have anything. I'm trying to rack up the money to travel, blah, 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 blah. This is all communicated. So all of that, him paying for the deposit. Why was he willing to pay the deposits? And like, I never really questioned why he was so helpful in that way, and I should have. A part of me thought, well, oh, maybe it's because it's in, maybe it's not fancy. Like, it was different things I thought, but I should have thought deeper than that. Like, why is he so willing to, as a landlord that is a lucrative business and has multiple properties, Why is he so willing to go above and beyond to get me and my son there? Because the average landlord around the world is not going to be doing that. They're not going to be willing to pay the deposits for your electricities and all that. They're not going to be going above and beyond to give you information on resources. They're not going to be agreeing to pick you up at the bus station. They're not going to be doing all those things. I mean, because they have a business, and that's personal money. Like, they're not going to be doing all that. A part of me, once again, I thought that maybe the unit, since I didn't have, of course, we didn't have the opportunity to see in advance. I thought, oh, maybe he's having a hard time. My thoughts was, oh, he might be having a hard time renting the unit if it's like in an isolated area. People want something. And so that's one of the things. So I was like, oh, he's having a hard time renting the unit, and maybe that's why he's willing to be so helpful. I didn't think that, no, it was because racketeering. Maybe there's a pattern of preying on vulnerable people, and then, like a helper, savior type deal. And then when you don't get your way, or if they, stand up to you, or if whatever it is, and then when it's time to come to an end, when it's time to let it go, when it's time, to get whatever that benefit over, they want to move on. And now there's a problem. All of a sudden, it's amnesia. All of a sudden, the story is changing. All of a sudden, I didn't think that I am now. So what he did was this. I thought that, because we had like a little bit of confrontation, when we were trying to get all, the late fees paid. I paid him extra every month. There was actual written agreement on all of that, and without missing a beat. So I'm going somewhere with that. Okay, there was never a missing of beat, never. I think I was late one time, and I asked, like, not even late, like maybe it was like a day, because you see what I'm saying? Like, that's as far as it ever went, ever. And it was, and so we got into like a conversation, a little bit altercation about it. That's when I asserted myself, and that's when I was like, okay. And I said, okay, well, I misunderstood, blah, 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 blah. So got the resource, found it, got that, he got all of his fees. So when that happened, I was excited, because I was like, okay, good. I ain't got to hear none of that. I was like, that's done. And he even said, I bet you're happy about this, because, at least it's freeing up, another, like 60 some odd dollars or something. It's freeing up extra a month. And I was like, yeah. So I was like, it's not much, but I'm like, it could at least be food. It could at least be, some things, he needs. And so a little bit more time went by. So I was like, okay, that's clear and taken care of. I wasn't able to pay the landscaper dude, the last landscaper dude, and I think it was like 50. It wasn't much either. Now, this is what's fascinating. Even that wasn't much. It was like $50. And was it even that much? 25 or 50? But I can tell you, it was no more than 50. Okay. And now remember, this is my son's personal business. This is us. Okay, dealing with that. It wasn't something connected to, his renting the unit. Okay. And He then, I want to say either called or he texted me. This is when we were preparing. Like I said, it's always towards that ending transitional time where you're going to get this. Okay. He either texted or called and was saying, oh, I spoke with, he mentioned the landscaper guy. And he mentioned that you hadn't had a chance to, pay him, from the last time. Do you want me to pay it? And then you can just owe me. And I remember this. I was upset actually, but I kept my cool because I'm like, he's out of line. That was one of several times where he crossed boundaries. Okay, because again, that he did not want to cover it as a part of the service, so he really had no business. If that was not something that he was covering, he had no business even asking, discussing. If he's leaving it up to the tenant, then anything to do with any of that was not for him to be saying anything, discussing it with anybody, asking me. That was out of line. And I said actually, I said something like, no, actually, no, I don't want that. And I was like, that's not really for you. Something along the lines. I was professional, but I did allude to, like, that's not really for you to worry about. That's because it's not for you to worry about. So, I turned that down, but I realized, I was like, okay, I'm like, he's just looking for any way. You see what I'm saying? Because it was already clear at that point. Like I said, I was already looking and preparing for Darrell to get out of there. So it's like and then he had gotten all the monies. This is why I keep making a point about stuff. Because when you deal with landlords or managers, the primary stuff, when it's normal, healthy circumstances, and there's no other agenda involved, under normal, healthy circumstances, the things that usually becomes like an alert to them is like if the resident has like some riffraff, they got some bad traffic, they are like going around disturbing all the other tenants. There are always issues with paying their rent. They're tearing up the unit. I'm not talking about regular like wear and tear of a unit, but it's like those are some of the primary things folks typically, otherwise, unless something big and major, they're usually not going to be tripping. They're like, okay, everything is kosher, everything's cool, it's no problems. This person's quiet, they ain't bother nobody, they don't have no traffic, they paying on everything. They're not, okay, I'm good. Typically. Okay, that's, like I said, under normal, healthy circumstances that does not have a hidden agenda behind it. Okay, so that's when I said, I'm like that, and then I'll go again. I was trying to figure out a way, so how am I going to move? So I went through all this process. I was going around seeing who I could pay that may have had a pickup truck. Like, I was really simply just doing what I could do with what we had and what was readily available. And I had asked if I could, I was like, can I use your pickup truck? Pay to use it, so like that he didn't have to do anything or whatever. But he was like, oh no, I could do it, and I'll use the big truck, and I can do that. He's like, well, where is it? It's just, okay, I could do that, and blah, 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 blah. Once again, seeming to be very helpful. But by then, I had already kind of had my spidey senses up, like, okay, let's see what shenanigans is. I was like, okay, well, this is my option, but let's see what fucking shenanigans is going, this is what I'm saying to myself. Okay. I was like, okay, fine. Again, I was tired. We were under spell work then. We were being attacked then. There were strange things happening, even more so then. Okay. And so, needless to say, it took its toll on my son and me. So no, we weren't pristine and all that stuff. You got motherfuckers. Anyway, I'm like, stop playing. Quit that. Stop that. Just stop. But anywho, so I knew it was going to be something because we'd already had too many other incidences. So again, I still just had to run with what was available. Y'all may wonder why she's saying this, why she's telling this tonight, why, or this morning, or whatever time it is when you see this. I'm saying this because I have spoken and I've told everyone to leave me and my son alone, and they have failed to do that. And so as this is persisting, I'm going to persist. I'm going to start calling out more names. I'm going to start pulling up more pictures. And I'm going to report all this stuff to Homeland Security. I'll be getting legal counsel. I can't do Lone Star. Lone Star pretends like they are trying to contact me and reach me, and they're not. I'm like, I keep getting an email from them. I'm like, Lone Star, you ain't trying to call me. I don't see no missed call, no voicemail, nothing. But every time I try with them, I get that letter from them. So I got another resource from someone else. And so I'll be getting back with them in terms of like free legal stuff. Because I've already attempted to go the route of anything to do, yeah. So I'll be getting some legal advice of how to possibly sue those that live above my son and the ones that I've caught stalking and doing weird things. As well as reporting them to Homeland Security, because Homeland Security deals with stuff like cults and trafficking. So it's not going to be strange to them, me saying that these people are, trying to traffic me and my son, or that they're doing spell work. They deal with that. But that's why, as I've officially spoken to several, or should I say attempted to, so whether that was via a voicemail, via messenger, whatever means, you know what I'm saying, within limits, because you can't make people talk to you, and then you want to be cautious and mindful and smart about it. But there's definitely been warning and a command. I specifically said, if you're paying people to do things to me and my son, to whether that's harassing, making things difficult and challenging, to illegally watch and surveil, as well as do spell work, I suggest you cease and desist now. Call your witches off. That's what I told them. I sure did. That's what I left on the voicemail. And they did not listen to me. So that's why I'm continuing. And all the data in which I'm collecting, I'm not dealing with none of these. No, I'm bypassing all that. Homeland Security, TIs, any of you out there, you might want to look into that. Homeland Security. Because at some point, you do get to a point like you wonder, like, who's, like, how far, like, what? You try CIA, FBI, it's like, I don't know. They some time to handle us, baby, And there's corruption involved. But because it's trafficking. It's a form of trafficking. And they know about cults. People may go around pretending like they don't know, they ain't understanding nothing about what you're talking about. But they know. And they also know about spell work and ritual abuse. And they still doing that to my son. That's why. And I'm starting to record my sons when I'm sensing, because now I'm really learning how to gauge the difference between a natural autistic thing versus other stuff. And the reason why I'm doing it, because again, they didn't fuck themselves royally at this point, because they pissed me off. The convenience of hiding things under, that's just I'm gonna make them pay double, triple, quadruple for that. Doing stuff and trying to hide it under, well, no, that's, he's, you see how convenient spell work on the differently able community is? Oh, I'm afraid these suckers. See how convenient that is? Then one can just say, oh, they're diagnosed to have, that's not a spell. That's not a raggedy hoe witch. That's not his witch core mistress. That's and they'll just dismiss us. You see what I'm saying? You try to take that to any kind of regular standard city, local, police or, city, local court, system of any sort. They're going to look at you like you crazy. They're going to say, oh, the person's got a disability, and you're saying because they're doing this that someone's doing spells on them. Oh, like I said, I'm going to make all these people pay quadruple for that. Casters and the benefactors. Exploiting the disabled or the differently abled and the situation so that it's like, oh, what do you mean? What are you talking? What are you, I told everybody, and I mean it. And it's not talk. They should be know. Some of them should know that it ain't just based on some of the things that's happening to some of them. And guess what? It's not because, I'm gonna set the record straight, because it ain't even because I have personally have done anything as of yet. But it is because of what my guidance is and perhaps what my team is doing. Which is why the warning goes out in the first place. Because they're saying, look, we don't want to knock you on your ass, but at some point that is going to happen. Now you're stubborn and you're full of pride and ego, so when I say things like, I was talking to one of the resources ladies either today or yesterday, because lately that's what I'm spending a lot of time doing. I'm being nosy. I'm in the background. I'm researching every day, making phone calls and connects, and in the background searching out stuff. So I'm doing a lot of that right now as we are preparing for all these changes. And I was talking to this one lady, and because you have to basically, the thing about all this, you basically got to say the same thing. This is what's exhausting about the whole shit. One day I may end up making some kind of program to change the whole game of this shit. But anyway, because this is what makes the whole thing fucking exhausting. The survivor, because you go in a circle, and now the people mean well, but it's like basically you essentially got to tell your story over and over and over and over and over again. In this case, the lady, she was very nice. It was a pleasant, exchange with her, but I was telling her that she was like, oh wow, like she had warmth. Like I like when I get situations where people ain't fucking dead as a fucking. It's like, are you alive in there, motherfucker? Hello. Because they'd be so sterile, some of them, like some people be so sterile, and it's like, oh, you definitely don't want to be in nothing to do with the health industry whatsoever about it. You really want to be on, because there's a certain warmth that needs to come with anyone in helps industry, in my opinion. You can't be too clinical. You too fucking. Okay, you just. Do you bleed? What's in there? Anywho. So I was telling her, I said, well, and I was calm, because like I said, I am actually more calm than people think that I am right now. That's the funny part. But that doesn't stop, the getting upset or like feeling some kind of way, but I'm just more calm now. I'm not as reactive. And that's because I'm doing a lot of work in the background. But I was telling her, I said, you would think, because as she was showing warmth and stuff, because that's how you have a healthy conversation. If you is in helps, you don't just sit there and be just listening and be just clinical in your response. Yeah. Like, oh, okay, I can imagine that's a lot. And geez, that shows that you're actively listening, and it shows that you're not dead. And that you are empathetic, and that you're concerned, and that you're not just listening to wait for your turn to rebuttal. Because people trip me out with that. They'll just let you talk, and listen. And it's like, are you hearing anything that I'm saying? And is that registering? But I told her, I was like, yeah, you would think that, because I said, my son, I was telling her like it was connected to an ex, the people upstairs, and, like how they know a lot of people like run the city and town and stuff like that. And I think that that's like some way a part of it all. And I was like, but I don't know these people, personally or whatever. And I said, I was like, but my son, I was like, he don't really have nothing to do with nobody dated and blase. He has absolutely nothing to do with that. And I was like, you would think, huh? I said, you would think that there was some level of decency in that regard. I'm like, but it's not. I'm like, that's not what this is, and this is why I'm talking to y'all now. Which is why I know we are being trafficked. And She was like, yeah, wow. She's like, I know. She's like, you know, she's like, you would think, huh? I said, oh, you would. I said, but no. You know, I told her, I said, I think some of these people have a problem with the disabled. I think they, you know, that may very well be some of their prejudices for some of these people. And they feel like they should be a commodity. They should be an energy source for their fuckery. A check, a free ride, an easy ride, an easy, you know, problem, you know, and you can run them and mistreat them and be lackadaisical and half-ass it. And steal from them and pretend like it's that they crazy and all that kind of shit. I've told these people, they all hide like cowards. And for those of you who, you know, you have a hard time with the idea of the spell work part, well, even if I were to take away that aspect, which is so, I mean, that's reality, that's the facts. But even if I were to take away that aspect, this is still trafficking. This was paying people because somebody pissed that they didn't get their way. From exes to relatives and landlords alike, you know. So I'm not gonna like feed collective. I'm trying to not feed these parasitic energies, and that's gonna continue to be. But I'm also gonna continue to. They keep fucking with me, you know. They keep doing what they're doing. So you know, okay, more exposure, and it ain't gonna be the kind they want. I say, call your witches off. They're doing, do y'all want to know how many spells just into, well, it's 3:05 now, but let's say it was still 11 p.m. or something. You want to know how many spells have been ran on me and my son just today? All day. Because I can tell every time there's spells being done, and his energy and my energy. That's just today. So this is psychotic, psychopath energy. And the entire cult covenant community is just fine with it, which leads me to believe that they're psychotic as well. And the fact that they continue, I told my son's case manager, the case manager supervisor, I was like, it's always something, which is leading me to believe exactly what I believe. When it's time to go, because maybe there was some kind of guarantee that these witches would have me dead by now, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, who takes those kind of jobs anyway? But maybe, you know what I'm saying, there was some kind of guarantee, and it's the time has expired or whatever the plan was didn't all the way. Maybe it only went halfway the way it's supposed to go or something like that. So that's when you'll get landlords and managers and their staff, like I said, it's going to be suddenly having problems trying to find a way to pin extra fees on you, trying to get you caught up. All of a sudden now at the end is, oh, there's another occupant. Like those types of things. Like, really? After the ordeal and 2-3 months shy of time for the girl man to be gone? Okay. So that's like a backlash of, I'm mad that this is not going to go all the way we want it. And then I'm also mad because you assert yourself and won't let us just, ruckshot and do whatever we want. And also because we're stalking you and we don't like what you're saying on the social media that we pretend to not be watching. They are running spells on they do sex rituals on my son every night. Domination, compels, hypnosis. And they do this to a lot of disabled people. They do it to a lot of people who aren't disabled. You know what I'm saying? Because really, it's just, if you're not an awareness, it can be done anyway. Then they send stuff to attack him constantly, which I can understand then why he'll be in like an angry spirit, because he's being violated in every way possible. And the little comforts that he try to get, they make sure to try to strip that from him. The basic comforts, which is little to nothing compared to these greedy entitled sons of bitches out here with they spoiled ass, nappy-headed kids. So then they trigger all these things. Some of them that's behind it is doing it because they have crap ass relationships with their kids that they pretend to not have crap ass relationships with their kids. And they're jealous. So they, as per every other relationship, they want to create a problem with the relationship with my son like every other relationship. So they do spells to make him, to trigger his anger, but then so that would make him open and receptive to walk-ins and step-ins, but to cause him to behave narcissistically in the name of trying to get him to abuse me by proxy. And to get me, you see where this is going, to get him to abuse me by proxy, and then to get me to feel so overwhelmed or some kind of way about it that I put him away in somewhere to the ward of the state, or I see exactly what these cunts and fucks are doing, and I'm gonna make them pay for every bit of it. Because I see it for what it is. It's to exhaust me. It's to everything. To make me look like I'm unfit. It's to wear him out to where he's in burnout and he develops all these phobias and all these things. And then they could turn around and look and say, see, he's not being provided for, he's not this and he's not. No, they're depleting his energy and abusing him, and he's exhausted. And this has been going on though. This amplified, like I said, we were trafficked here because it amplified as soon as we got here. I was given some resources though. Here's the good thing. I was given some resources that is going to possibly remedy me being able to get around a lot more easier and not, have to worry about the Ubers. So that's a surprise. That's a surprise element. Because I tell you what, even before, listen to me, even before this whole Rico stuff, like, okay, because there's this process. It's going to be a process of me getting out of here, all of those things. But I'm letting folks know now. If this shit don't stop, it's gonna get ugly. Long before Rico charge. If all these cars, they better call that shit off. And I mean goddamn business. They better call that fucking shit off right now. They better take my name off the goddamn list. And they better call this shit off. And these witches better stay the fuck up out me and my son's energy. If not, like I said, it's about to get real ugly long before a Rico charge. I don't care, and I'm not trying to hear nothing about nothing. I'm going to make that crystal clear. I don't care about nobody's situation, deals, concerns. Dismissed. Me and my son are not any of these fucks in this state or any other state. Meal ticket. I don't care about who trying to get in the code. I certainly don't care about that. Who trying to be auditioning, who wants to be the or somebody that's trying to prove to some dude or some girl. It's like, oh, dismissed. I don't care. It's for somebody, mama, somebody that I don't care. I don't care. Somebody concerned about little, I don't care. Consider this, it's not a warning. This is a preview. This shit continues, I'm already commanding it. I'm demanding it. I'm already co-creating it. Energetically. Things gonna get ugly. This goes for everyone, especially relatives. And this is anybody that we may not even know. You know, this goes for anybody. It's not limited to the ones I'm talking about. This goes for anybody in social media, this, you know, any rando, schmando, you know, because I understand that it's massive and it's not all interconnected. So this goes for all of it and all of them. It's going to get real ugly. I find it the most fascinating thing in the world is to see people who practice some really heinous things on folks that and affecting them and their children. But when something happens to their children, they be like, Lord, you know, they be like, pray, please pray, and Jesus, and, you know, whatever their belief is, it actually ticks me off because I'm like, the audacity. To sit their asses there talking about, good God, you know, please, you know, help. What do you mean? See, I talk like that because people need to snap out of it. This haze, this daze, this spell. The same people that's go around abusing people, doing stuff to people's kids, or just, you know, innocence and shit like that. And another thing, people don't know how long my son has been under some kind of a unjust spell work since he was a kid. You know, because people that want to rationalize, you know, they're grown and stuff like that. His fucking life was robbed him. So stop speaking out ignorance in the side of your neck. Not that that should matter. The whole point is people who do nasty, nefarious things impacting people and their children and don't care nothing about it if the price is right. And then when some happen to Shaquan, you know, and I make all these names because it's like, it don't really matter. It's all cultures. But my point is, them be the main ones that you're going to hear, they're going to be crying, bitch. And they're going to be talking about, please, Jesus, and whoop. And it's like, I'm appalled at that. I am. Because they be really delusional and really be thinking that they're supposed to be miracles. Bitch, nigga, ain't you a fucking terrorist and shit? It's going to get real ugly if people don't back the fuck up off of my son and me.